What an opportunity we have to be able to clear up all of our thought processes so that we develop a biblical worldview, a way of looking at life that is different to the orientation that anybody who has been purely exposed to the world's regime, the world's systems, the education of humanism, humanists who believe that all we need to do is have the right education and we will be able to grow and excel and evolve into the purest form of humanity that we could possibly be. Well, God's word has a lot to say about that. We're in Ecclesiastes and we're learning how to think right. We're in chapter 1. Today we're looking at verse 18. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. What a thing to say. If that is the case, then ignorance may well be bliss. Well, perhaps, but ignorance is not necessarily better. The fact is, life teaches you some things. You learn that sorrow and grief and betrayal and trial and disappointment are inescapable. How are you going to handle that if you don't think right about things? When we get to Job, we're going to learn a lot more about how our approach to life should be during the trials and the afflictions that come our way. If you delve deep enough into church history, you learn that your heroes are not as noble as you'd like to think. So we all have these ideology. Well, no. We have this perception of our heroes from old, that they are saints, that they did everything right and got it all together, and all we need to do is emulate their lives. But the heroes of old were men of their times, and sometimes their times were tough times, and they were tough men. And so Luther and Calvin and Augustine all have blood on their hands. And yet they're our heroes. If you delve deeply enough, then you find out things that are beneath the surface. And when you get beneath the surface, then there's some things there that really you wish you'd never learned. The man who led me to Jesus is one of my heroes. Yet he had skeletons in his closet that the whole world eventually heard about. And he went to the grave in infamy. I never saw his dark side, so my memories of him are all warm and cozy. And when I think of him, I have an association wherein if I hadn't have known him, I would never have known Jesus. However, it was not like that for others. For others, they saw the dark side. That's their experience. Most people would rather not know about such things. And I don't talk about his dark side. Nevertheless, you would all have seen it on the television screens. It's good enough to know enough, but not too much. Romans says, I would have you wise unto that which is good, and simple concerning evil. Solomon, in a way, is talking about balance here. We need to balance stability and exploration. You have to explore because the secure, stable, sensible part of you gets outdated. But if exploration goes too far, if you get extreme, then you can encounter things that flip your world upside down. Creative people tend to be somewhat sensitive. But if your creativity causes you to continually extend yourself beyond your boundaries, then you're going to keep upsetting your own apple cart. Children have a voracious appetite for knowledge. You want them to learn, but you don't want them knowing too much too soon. You want to protect their innocence, their naivety. That's why movies have cautions such as parental guidance recommended. We don't want them exposed to adult concepts while their mind is malleable. Once we become teenagers, then natural inquisitiveness and hormones take over, driving us towards exploration. But this is also a troublesome time and potentially dangerous. Our frontal lobes haven't yet developed, and we are incapable of making fully mature choices at this stage, even though we want to prove to the world that we've grown up. Our identity is still developing. Our sexual identity is still formatting, along with our orientations towards the world. It's a precarious time. They need exposure so they can become adults, but not to concepts and experiences beyond their maturity. That's why Ham, in the book of Genesis, is cursed when he exposed himself to Noah's nakedness, because some things should remain undercover until you're old enough to handle the exposure. The sense of invincibility of youth provides demands clarity regarding boundaries. Marxist ideology, drugs, pornography, sexual experimentation can wind you up into a world of trouble. And some of that trouble is like a seed buried in your soul, and you think you're okay, but it's by the time you get to your 30s and 40s, what you did back then begins to creep into your here and now. You're wondering why you're feeling the way that you are, why you're depressed the way you are, why you don't want to be touched. The wrong kind of knowledge brings grief. In the Garden of Eden, there were two trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. God said, don't touch the tree of knowledge. Certain knowledge it's wise to avoid. And because they fell, Adam and Eve had to vacate the garden, making it clear that some places, once entered, well, there's no going back. Post-traumatic stress disorder happens when you go through an experience that blows out the axioms of your knowledge system. You encounter something unexpected, something malevolent, something you can't account for within the confines of the system you use to interpret the world. Someone does something to you, or you realize somebody's out to hurt you, or perhaps you self-sabotage your own boundaries and do something far worse than you ever imagined that you could do, like Judas, like Peter. And then after you've done the deed, you're so shocked by your action that you don't know what to do about it. Those suffering from PTSD can feel as though they're being attacked by a malevolent spiritual force. And the doctors might prescribe drugs that help you cope, but outside of God's intervention and his healing power, there's no going back. You wear that for the rest of your life in one form or another. All worldly knowledge is a double-edged sword, both good and evil. Knowledge can set you free, help you progress, heal you, but knowledge can also hurt. And the message of the garden is to have enough knowledge to be able to set up proper boundaries. If you want to be wise, then discover the boundaries that God has laid out for man in his word. And make these boundaries your values in life. And by valuing them, you will save yourself much grief and sorrow. Think about it. With all knowledge comes the pain of responsibility. Wow. Wow. You can save yourself a whole world of trouble if you set up the right boundaries in the here and now. Make them strong. Make them sure. Immovable. The boundary stones of your life. Set them up. Do it now. If you know you're living beyond them, retreat. Get back to safe ground and save yourself a world of trouble. That'll be wise for you to do that. And we'll see you again tomorrow for some more wisdom from the book of Ecclesiastes. God's blessing be upon your life. May the sun shine even on a cloudy day so that you can see the light of God no matter what is going on around you. We'll see you tomorrow.